Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Adventures Travel Club television show. Betty, we're going to be in Izmir, and then we're going to leave there real quickly, and we're going to go to Troy, right?
Troy, that's right. All the words that you know about Troy is the words, the memories or the thoughts you have is about the horse, the Trojan horse.
That is if you read the Iliad, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't know too much about it. But we're going to find out a lot about it on today's episode because there is so much to learn. I didn't realize that there was that much. Oh, wait a minute. Before we get there, we're going to leave Izmir here. Betty is buying scarves. I bought some scarves there, too.
Everybody bought scarves.
Beautiful.
It wasn't just Betty. I'm glad you admitted that you did some buying, too.
Yeah, I did.
But look at how pretty they were.
They
were really, really nice. And it's so nice to have a souvenir from the places you've traveled.
Yeah, it is. And these kids, we were on our way to Troy, and we don't know why, but they had a flag that they were sort of flying out the window there, and they were holding the bus up a little bit. I think the bus driver wanted to get around them, but they were
well, maybe they won a game. Maybe they played soccer.
Hey, that's right. I think it was a soccer deal. That's right, because there were some soccer championships that were going on in Turkey while we're there. Well, from the soccer to Troy, here we are, and we can just see part of the layout here. Now, we have to explain to you that Troy, there wasn't just a city of Troy. There were like 10 cities of Troy, and now they think that there's probably one more. And there's the Trojan horse.
There's the horse that. Oh, Marv, you say you didn't really have to read the story, but you, I don't know, in history books and when you went to school, there was always something about, especially the women hiding in it, because that was always so exciting to think all these people got inside of the horse and.
They left it outside the city, and everybody left. All the warriors left, and so the people in Troy thought, well, they were all gone. So, and they brought the horse in, and then all of a sudden, the soldiers came out and captured the town, and then waved to the people that were out on the ships. I say waved to them. I don't know. They probably started some fires, and they came in and they captured the whole place. And we have to remember too that Troy was sitting almost right on the water there. I mean, there was a harbor here, so it was very close. Just like we remember when we were in Ephesus as well. Yeah. But Betty, you have some information on one of the guys who actually went there and started doing all this excavation.
I do, and I think it's so interesting. And several years ago, I did read a book by him, and I never knowing that I eventually was going to go and see what he was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But
what's his name?
His name is Schliemann. I have to
get
German. What do you think? But anyway, he was really one of the first persons in recent years to ask about Troy, and it became a thing with him. I mean, he did research on it. He was really inspired by Homer's epics, and he wanted to prove that Troy was a real city. So he started as a grocer's helper, and he taught himself English, French, Russian, Arabic, Latin, and Greek.
Whoa.
Memorized the Iliad and the Odyssey. Then he came to California, and he got there just when they discovered gold.
Oh, during the gold rush.
Yeah, so then he became a citizen of the United States and became independently wealthy. So he had the money to go ahead and do these excavations.
Oh, so he funded himself then when he went to Turkey?
He funded himself. Yes, he did. He wanted to prove that there was a Troy, and it wasn't just a story.
Well, I think from what we can see even here on the old city walls of Troy that, there was a city of Troy. A lot of people thought it was mythology, too. But we're going to find out a little bit more about it from our guide, Mehmet, as he explains the city walls.
But Troy 1 and 2 were very tiny mounds or tumuli, so to speak, because as for Troy 1, they are talking about a diameter of only 300 feet. From one end of the town to the other end. 300 feet. That's it. No more. That's 3000 BC. Still, they had some kind of a city wall during that time. Of course, slightly different than this one. Troy 2, which is about down to 2,000, 2,300, 200, etc. The city is slightly expands. So apparently there must have been an earthquake or a fire that the city is destroyed. So they start to build the new walls, and it's only now 120 meters, so like 400 feet maximum. It's only after that, of course, the city begins to expand. And what you see over here is the walls, the city walls of Troy 6. From 18 down to 12th century BC, needless to mention, it's all BC. And that's Troy 9 back there. Those stones and these stones are slightly different in shape, and also this is sandstone, and that's also a very soft stone. But, sort of the fine cutting and all that is different than this one. So that's Hellenistic. Troy 9 is Hellenistic, followed by the Roman period. As you can see, the earlier city walls were over here already, But as the city continued expanding, they had to have additional walls and towers. Let's come back to this city walls over here. This is rather interesting. On this trip, we haven't been to Hattushash, the capital of Hittite Empire, because Hittites and the Trojans had contacts with each other, commercial contacts and all that. And we always try to think that who influenced whom, and most probably Hittites, the Trojans. Because if you go to the Hittite side, you see similar blocks of stone, except not sandstone, of course. This is sandstone because it's close to the sea, whereas over there it's the mountain rock. But over there, the blocks are much lighter, much bigger. I mean, like two, three pieces of stones you see over here, just forming one block, and they are put on top of each other with a rampart and with an underground passage and all that. The city walls were quite strong and well fortified over there. And it is, I think, for this reason, the empire continued all the way down to 12th century, for like 500-600 years easily. I mean, if you take the beginning, it's only 800 years, nevertheless. So here, we see these city walls. Again, in earlier times, you don't see the stones very finely cut. It's just that, it's like chiseled, rounded off, and put on top of each other. You can easily see the difference between the two. This way, the city walls are erected.
Well, as we travel out through Troy today, we're going to see many, many city walls from Troy 1 through up to Troy 10.
Enemy's point of view, you may think, oh, it's very easy to defend because of the inclination. You just start climbing and you go over into the city. If you think so, you're mistaken. Try. Because if you want to climb these walls, of course, suppose you are climbing, you have to use both of your hands as well as your feet, legs. So what do you have in your hand? Your spear, arrow, whatever it is. You can't use them. You're totally unprotected. This is one thing. Another thing, with this inclination, the soldier up there defending his own city does not worry or just does not put out his head to see what you are doing down there. If it were straight up, you wouldn't be able to see what the hell he's doing there. Maybe bringing a ladder or whatever. So you had to sort of take out, put out your head and see what he is doing. That means you're in danger of getting killed during that time because the guy can shoot you from down here. But with this inclination, you don't do anything. You just watch what he's doing. He's coming up, you just push him down. Or as he gets close, you just kill him. Yeah? Very simple.
Very simple indeed. Well, I guess if you're going to climb a wall and you don't have anything to defend yourself, you don't know what's going to come down on you, hot water, a rock, an arrow, or a spear.
I think this was done even with the Indians when we had our battles then with the forts, that they would stand and try to push them down, as they were climbing up the mountain, the fort.
On the walls of the fort.
Yeah, it would just make sense.
I guess it does. Anyway, this is interesting because the Dardanelles that we've heard about are just lie out just a distance out there in the sea from where we are right now. But Benny, you had a question about why did they go to war? Why did they do all this sort of stuff?
Well, nobody really knows. It's just a real puzzle because they fought so long and so hard, and the Greeks won, and then they went meekly home. They didn't do anything with their conquest.
Well, did they take any of the Trojan treasures with them?
It says not. They didn't seem to be interested. Oh, they would have taken some.
You at least had to have a souvenir.
And who would know if they took them? Who would know that was
That's
what
true.
was missing? But they thought maybe it was for the control of the Dardanelles, or I don't know. Maybe because the Trojans were so rich from the commerce, and that's why they were fighting. They just really don't know.
Well, I think too. Mehmet had talked about this. Is that they were, who was going to control that area where the Dardanelles were? In fact, the whole seacoast area up and down there. I guess that was always a bone of contention, between the people that had settled there on the which now is the west coast of Turkey, and of course those various islands, the Greek islands. What are the Greek islands now? So
you see, it's never going to end, is it?
No.
I mean, we worry so much about all the wars that are going on now, but I don't guess in our civilization there's ever been a time that we did not have war.
Well, it is still happening. One of the islands that is part Turkish and part Greek. I mean, they're even in the news here the last few weeks it's been there too. Anyway, we're going up right now on where one of the temples was located, the temple of Athena, and there's still a lot of artifacts that are here that we can see. There are a lot of marble and a lot of carvings that are still here. And this excavation, as we have learned, is still going on because you have so many cities here, one on top of the other. And there's a Trojan horse, as you can see, off in the distance, which is also being reconstructed the day
Yeah.
that we were there. We didn't get a chance to really go into it because the workmen were working on it. But let's find out a little bit more about the building.
Now, if you come closer, you may even notice that counting the stones from the top down, between the third and the fourth one, there seems to be a continuous opening, like a shelf, going around this house. Of course, in time, it got, damaged a little bit, but at least this is one thing, that they had some kind of an opening or a shelf to put some of the things over there in the wall. This is one. If we are talking about Troy 6, that means from 18th century down to 12th century, then this becomes a great accomplishment because with this size of the room, you have a problem to build a roof over there in those times. Now very easy, of course, therefore difficult to imagine. But during that time, if you have this kind of a room or house, how would you cover it with it? Here is the solution. Look at this circular stone over here. These doors continue sort of like a hollow ditch, one over here, one over there. So they had 12 stone bases on top of which they erected the wooden beams, each of which having a diameter of about a foot, giving support to the ceiling. That's interesting. A large house, but now this is the solution to support the ceiling. 12 stone beams, bases, and then wooden beams rising on that one. Yet, later on, I will mention to you, this is Troy 6 early example. By the time this era is almost to finish, down to 13th or 12th century, about the same size of a house, but this time they used 2 large stone bases and the beams on top of that to give support to the same size of a house. From 12 bases down to 2 stone bases only. It's Troy 6, beginning and end point. It's on that side. In fact, from where I am, I can see the stone, the block of the stone over there. But when we go around, I will point out and then bring it to your attention. So within the same era, this is, I think, a great accomplishment of our ancestors, of mankind during that time, to increase the space of a house like that and have more number of columns to support the ceiling, and then reduce that number down to 2, from 12 down to 2, to give support. Scholars call this one great progress of mankind for that size of a house. And in that corner down there, there is also a hearth, a small fireplace, so to speak, so they could heat up the room and they could do their cooking and all that.
But it doesn't just amaze you to see, one civilization on top of another? It's incredible.
Yes.
How these archaeologists can do it, I don't know, but I certainly have to give them an awful lot of credit.
Well, they study for it.
The Temple of Athena, which is Troy 9. This temple is dedicated to Athena, and it dates back to Hellenistic times, and of course it was used for a period of not less than 600-700 years, very easily, from 3rd century BC to 4th century AD. With the change of religion into Christianity, they stopped using this. But as late as mid-19th century, until our dear friend Schliemann came over here, this temple was still in a good state of preservation, with all the marble columns, of course, just lining along the side of the temple. And considering, the temple has some treasure that people, come up with votive offerings and all that, he thought that there might have been something around here. So this area was dug out and destroyed by him with the hope of finding the treasury, as a result of which all the pillars, marble columns and all that, tumble down, and they are just lying over there. Later on we go down that way, so you see the size of those capitals and the columns, to have an idea how beautiful it looked, and it was facing out to the east in this direction, as you can easily understand that. It is this same temple which was worshipped by many people, not only the local people, of course. First, Alexander the Great. That's Dardanelles out there. So he crossed the Dardanelles by making a wooden beach, moved his army to this side. And east of Troy, about 60 kilometers, 35 miles, there is one river called Granicus, and he found out that the Persian army was there. As the Persian army, I told you before, went all the way to Greece and Macedonia in the course of 5th and 4th centuries and took over all these places. So he was burning with this desire of taking revenge of his ancestors. When he found out he was over there, he first came to pray over here for success, because she is the goddess of war and she's got that wisdom up here. So apparently part of it was given to him, and he went that way to fight with the enemy. He defeated the Persians. They started running eastward, back to eastern part of present-day Turkey, and he came back over here. He thanked her, and then he slaughtered, they say, like 1,000 bulls and oxen and all that for his success, partly over here, partly in other sanctuary, which I will show to you next to the western gate. It was used for that purpose. Then he continued his campaign down from here, Pergamon, Troy, Pergamon, Smyrna, Ephesus, etc. So this is one thing. Then in the subsequent centuries, like Hadrian, like Caracalla, 2nd, 3rd century, and then Arcadius, in the coming of 5th century, which is already Byzantine times, these people all came down to this city, and then some of these emperors, they say, they made their sort of prayers over here, worships again to this goddess right under this very spot. Down here we have a well. There's still water in it. And now, especially this area is worth mentioning to have an idea when we are talking about the Trojan War. Is it merely a beauty contest, so that as a result of this war took place? I mean, if it had ever taken place, or there are some other reasons to it. If you look out to the fields, you see the car coming now, and then just imagine maybe another 300-400 yards in that direction, not close to it, in the opposite direction, you have a tractor or something like that in the field. Now, roughly, down to that place was the harbor of Troy. So the village is over there. You see ahead of you? To the left of the village, imagine an opening from there coming all the way as far as that field where you have the tractor, and sort of turning back again where you see the trees scattered around, reaching the Dardanelles.
Well, the area that he was talking about was just right, kind of out over the hill. But that the same way here in Troy as it was in Ephesus, where the land is sort of filled in where the sea was at one time, right? Mm. I mean, it just I guess through a few thousand years or whatever, all of the stuff that came down from the mountains just filled that in. Now it's good, rich farmland.
Yeah, and then of course there were the earthquakes too that do a lot of havoc because with the upheavals and stuff. So it all works out that well. It does it everywhere, not just there where the sea recedes. But you don't have to worry about it like over at Pismo, because it's going to be a few thousand years before they have to worry about any silt.
Are you sure about that?
No, I'm not sure at all, but I'm just teasing about
right. it. Anyway, as we look around here, we still can see lots and lots of these, what they call the capitals from these pillars, and it's just amazing to see how many of them there. And of course, we can see that they're all cataloged too. And let's find out a little bit more now as Mehmet gives us some more explanation.
And you see these huge marble pieces lying around here. They were all, integral part of this temple, forming the colonnade around the temple, one row of columns, as it was always the case. And now you see Marvin shooting. This trench over here is another one caused by Schliemann, because he found out an underground passageway or a tunnel over here. So, because it's underground with a sort of roof over that one, he considered that there might be something over here. So he went into it and he destroyed it. Still couldn't find it. But this is what is left of that one now.
Well, are you saying that he came here to do this, looking for treasure? That was his only reason?
Yes, that was his only reason. It was his only aim was to come and find the famous treasury of Troy 6, or this Trojan War. That was all the intention he had.
How long ago was this?
Last quarter of 19th century, about 120, 25 years ago, 1872.
There's a real
76.
interesting book on it.
There's
I
no
read a
photos
book on it.
Oh, I've read a book on it.
Yeah,
That's
about
not
him.
what
And
that-
all
No,
of
some old
But, no,
engravings
not-
and all that we see
no,
some
we
of
have
this
that,
in some of the
no.
old
About him.
pictures, and especially
that he had
descriptions
always
of
said
the
that there
travelers.
was a Troy because
Some people travel
father had read
to
Homer
steal,
to him.
but some travel, they make a note of what they see.
Where very well
So,
he
based on these inscriptions, you have an idea about this. Plus, you have the village over there. The people know it through the ear, you know,
he
it goes what
wanted
happened.
to prove that there was a Troy.
So, this one over here, and this used to lead to the town center. From there, turning right, you reach the southern end, which is the other side of the town. But this is what we have left of it. Let's go around the fig tree now,
I'd like
please.
to read.
That Schliemann was really a character, wasn't he?
Well, I don't think everybody liked him. He did leave a tremendous amount of rubble when he wasn't.
He destroyed a lot of stuff,
Yes,
didn't
he
he?
was not a bit concerned about the effects of his diggings. He just dug for the treasures that he could get, and of course, it wasn't all treasures. I would have to disagree a little bit, at least in the book that I read. He was really a devoted man to want to find the city of Troy. Because it was disproved that it even existed. It was
But what was his motivation?
well, I don't know. I think self-satisfaction was part of it.
And maybe-
He was extremely wealthy,
Yeah.
so
Well,
he didn't need the money.
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Well,
I couldn't say.
I'm not a historian.
You see these narrow, long walls over here. These are the homes of those times, what we call megaroon. You saw a large example of Troy 6 back there, supported by pillars and all that. But this is, again, one of the recent discoveries over here, and try to put a sort of retaining wall over here, so with rain and all that, erosion, as you can see, it is destroyed again, this very front part. So you have the homes lining one after another, megaroon as we call them, with two long walls like that, and then another two walls intersecting. When you go inside, in one corner there is a fireplace and a hearth for heating and cooking. And then they noticed that there was at least one stone bench that they could eat, on top of that or sit on top of that. But another thing, now this is the most important and interesting one. When they did excavation over here, under these benches, buried in the ground, they found the skeletons of two young children. And it is the conclusion of the scholars that the youngsters, when they were still so young and innocent, they were buried inside the house under the benches, whereas the grown-ups are buried in the regular necropolis outside the city. This is their conclusion, and this is the spot for it.
Biddy, did you have any idea that Troy was this big?
No, I was thinking of the horse. The vision of Troy comes to my to my mind. I think of the wooden horse.
Well, in fact, the area we're going to get up here in just a moment, and we're going to see the area where they actually brought the horse in. And as Mamet says, in fact, it was from this area out here. And if you look out, there would have been water out there further, and that's where the boats were waiting to come as soon as they got a signal, knowing that the horse was well inside the gates of Troy.
Because the island of Tenebris and the sea is out that way, so they retreated from here. Remember the story I told you? They retreated with the intention of going back home. So this way the Trojans were puzzled and then got, they thought that the war was over. They started celebrating this because if they did not surrender, it became a victory for them. They were mistaken because they left the wooden horse out here, which was taken into the city. The soldiers came out, sent out the signal to the soldiers waiting on the ships, by the island over there, out in the open sea. They rushed back and they conquered the city. So it's this area.
That's not the first time that...
And coming back to the story of Schliemann. One day, yes, I told you, Schliemann found this treasury, which he thought it belonged to Troy 6, or the famous Trojan War. Only later on, it is found out that he was mistaken. And the treasury was not of the famous Trojan War, but it was the treasury of Troy 2, because each and every, of course, king had the treasury. And this is basically based on his personal explanation of the case. Outside the city walls of Troy 2, to the western side of Rampart Road, which is in this direction, somewhere around here. He must have found some of these things and immediately calling his wife, send the man away. So they continued digging this area, the two of them. They found more than 500 pieces of diadems and sort of bracelets, bangles, earrings, you just name it. And with them, they fled away to Greece and to Germany, I told you. Then later on, of course, it was brought to the attention of the outside world. What happened to this treasury? Ronald was asking me. Second World War. What happens? Russians go down to Germany. They took everything from there, back to Russia. So nobody knew about it for quite a long while, until like 2-3 years ago. Then somebody noticed a picture somewhere yielded of this treasury. And then when they began to investigate the case, it was found out that it is in the storeroom in the basement of Leningrad Museum. It is there now, together with some of the artifacts and things that are taken from Germany during that war. And Our Lady, now Foreign Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, but she was then the Prime Minister, she made an official visit to Russia, spoke to Yeltsin about the treasury, that we wanted to have them back. When we said so, Germany protested, Greece protested. Germany protested because it is taken from here, from our collection, so you should return to us. Greece protested, this is part of Greek culture, so it should come back to us. We say we want it back because it belongs to this very piece of land, so it should be displayed over here, so we want it back. The result, it's still there.
Yeah, nobody wins.
You just wonder if they ever will get those treasures back.
Oh, I don't. Probably not. What a shame, really.
Well, you look all over the world. Look at what the English did when they were in Egypt. I mean, took so many things from the Egyptians and took them up, and now you can see them in the museum, in London.
Well, you
But
can
that's
see
happened all
them.
over
They're
the
not
world.
in the basement.
Yeah.
That would be my complaint.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. Well, they have to let the politicians, I guess, solve that one.
But something else again, I tell you, they have found the large-size theater for the demos, for the people. But not here, not in the city wall, not inside the citadel. It's way out in that direction, to the left of the wooden horse. Later on I will point the toilets to you, behind the toilets a little bit back, because this is a little bit raised, and the plane over there is lower. So the auditorium faces out the sea and to the plane. So they found, we are not allowed to go there, but this is definite. So the actual theater is over there, although not on the guidebook yet. It's over there. So for that reason, it is just an Odeon, for your information. Between these trees, the opening behind you, is the remains of a Roman bath. It is yet to be excavated.
There's a lot of area here that still needs to be excavated. We can see now here, one layer on the other. There's Troy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, et cetera, et cetera. And you see just how one was just right there on top of the other. And Mamet says now that they found other bones, and that they think that there's now a Troy 0. I mean, going even back further.
Marv, what I think is so fascinating is to think that how much erosion has had to have taken place during all that period, where they could build one on top of the other.
Or maybe two, they're using one as the foundation for the other.
But you can't build something on a roof. You have to. There has to be.
No, it could have fallen
something.
down by that.
Oh, but they'd still have to have a covering.
Sure,
of some
that's true.
kind.
And here we see the Trojan horse, which is also being redone at this particular time. Betty, if people are interested in the trips that we have coming up, and we have some very interesting ones, give them your phone number, please.
That's 488-7443.
And Betty has brochures on most of the trips, so call her right away. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.